Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and strap yourselves in for a huge deep dive into Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, the former CEO of Alphabet, the parent company, the former possibly, I'm not sure if he's still a Bilderberg steering member. He hasn't been on the official list for some time, but with the Bilderberg meeting coming up, former Bilderberg steering member, aka one of the power elite there. And again, he may just not be on the list. We don't really know if he's going to these meetings. In 2008, I know there's a lot of hubbub today about his censorship stories in China and, how he defended that. We're going to go over some of that interview too. But guys, this is called The Future of the Internet. This is a real stark look into Schmidt, into Google, into globalization in 2008, 11 years ago. And I went through this because I had seen it many years ago, probably 2008 or 9, when I was building my archives for Invisible Empire. And, at the time, I didn't really know where to fit all of this in. It's already a very long movie. So at the very end, I put just a very clip of him talking about the New World Order, as everybody calls it. So the reason I thought that this was really important is that's how he starts the speech. He introduces himself, says he's going to have a Q&A, and he's literally talking about globalization and the quote-unquote New World Order. And I know that many of you out there will say, well, that's pretty synonymous, Jason, with groups like the Bilderberg Group that have a huge affluence of power amongst them, the power elite, if you will. So we got a long way to go on this deep dive. Get ready. Here we go. Like I said, we're going to start with him talking.
So what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about the world as we see it today and a little bit about businesses and technology, and then take your questions. With this kind of an audience, you have a lot of ideas and things, and I learn just as much as you when we do this. I've been thinking a little bit about the structure of the world, right? The New World Order, as everybody says.
I've been thinking a little bit about the structure of the world, the New World Order, as everybody says. And when he means everybody, he means it's the power players that he's been around for some time. He didn't just jump into the CEO spot of Google, folks. All right, Sun Microsystems in his past, many other projects, the birth of the, of Ethernet, internet, you name it. This guy was involved in it some way, shape, or form. And Vernon Jordan, a very famous political figure, is actually the one that introduces him at this economic club of Washington. A lot of people sitting there are power players. So he opens it up with, I want to talk today about the structure of the world and the New World Order. And remember, this is 2008. So he's going to lay out 4 separate points, which I think are extremely important. And I think he's rather honest in this, and he's right on a lot of this stuff.
And it seems to me that there are 4 sort of big experiments, and I mean big experiments. Well, we have the U.S. Now, what comes to mind with the U.S.? Innovative, creative, surprising, individualist. Right? We all understand that. We're very proud of it. There's an online series called Smosh, created by 2 guys, 45 episodes, #1 subscribed channel of all time on YouTube, 12 million viewers.
Guys, you're watching me on YouTube right now. I believe right now you're looking at T-Series and PewDiePie upwards of 100 million subscribers. I don't even think Smosh had 12 million subscribers. He's talking about 12 million viewers. Some kind of a podcast. Okay? Again, this is really the birth of new media, the new internet. And I think that's why he was talking about, quote unquote, the New World Order and globalization. He ends on globalization in this short little quip. But look at that. Right out of the gates, this man is smart enough. And this is long before, by the way, Google acquires YouTube. Remember, they have their own platform, Google Video, before they absorbed them. And in 2008, they had not absorbed them yet. I think it was somewhere in 2009, 2010. I could be wrong. I should look that up. But again, right around that time is when this video revolution of entertainment happened. And he talks about this and, the birth of the cell phone, that small screen. Remember, this is 2008. I think this is generation iPhone 1. Possibly the 3G was out by then. I think the iPhone 3G may have been.
That's an experiment, an interesting one. Europe, educated, thoughtful, rule of law, empowering, sort of under control, right? Think about environmental policy in the EU. Very well done. Carbon credit trading system, so forth and so on. They've announced a unilateral 20% reduction in greenhouse emissions and so forth. Government investment driving key broadband of the region. Another experiment different from the US.
Let's stop. So he talks about the European Union. Think about the things he's hitting on here really quickly. European Union's big, and he also brings up what? Their CO2 program, their reductions under the European Union, a governing body that many want out of right now. You look at what's going on in France. They tried to implement those taxes. Well, guess what? We're almost at a year of protests, and the media in this country is almost silent. It's coming up, okay? Every week they're there, and I keep seeing bits and pieces in the European media where they try to say, scarcer numbers, dwindling numbers. No. Go to the live streams. Go to our coverage, the We Are Change coverage. Again, Luke on the ground there is vital. So this experiment seems to have failed in many respects 11 years later. It's what globalization is. It's what they were pushing even then. So let's continue, Mr. Schmidt.
Okay. What about China? Well, China is very different. What words come to mind about China? Monocultural, chaotic, controlling and confronting individual truths in a way that's very different from the first two.
Now, he's talking about the control of China. Remember, this is the very early days of the Chinese people getting access to this kind of stuff and them controlling their information. This is also really the birth of more and more of a relationship with Google and them. In fact, if we go to the article that everybody's so upset about and the interview from the BBC, this woman did a bang-up job. By the way, you want to see this whole video in context. The Eric Schmidt doubles down on major Google controversy video. We did it over at the News for a Change channel. But where is it right here? He has to buckle down quite a bit in this interview. And he talks about China and how he wanted to stay in the mainland and not go into Hong Kong. But again, he's talking about globalization. Again, this is his speech on the future of the internet and the new world order in 2008.
It's home of 5 of the world's 10 largest companies: China Life, PetroChina, China Mobile, Industrial Commercial Bank, and China Petroleum. It has the most number of internet users in the world, more than 210 million. And by the way, they just passed us. We're not catching up, okay? They're going to keep getting bigger and bigger on the internet. 50% of Chinese internet users are less than 24 years old. Most of the new Chinese users, majority, are actually from the rural areas, which is a huge surprise for us and a big impact. Online advertising is just taking off. What's the biggest application in China? Music. All of a sudden, and by the way, a lot of it's stolen. India.
Before we get to India, I want to show those marks there. They realized that China was even internet heavy in rural areas back in 2008, and it shows that they're tracing and databasing all the piracy even back then. And, obviously they talk about China, but they were doing that globally. So, these people have a lot of data out there, even in 2008. And there's a lot of things that he talks about. He talks about video recognition, the birth of AdSense in this, and artificial intelligence in a way that controls workers. We're going to get to that in a little bit and how that coincides with today. But India, another powerhouse. We were just talking about, for instance, the biggest global YouTube subscribers out there. And yes, you have PewDiePie, but then you have T-Series, and that's basically a Bollywood company. The not only technology industry in India has exploded, but the entertainment industry and the westernization of that country has also exploded. And you could call it westernization, but is it globalization? Again, this man's talking about it 11 years ago.
Following, right? Following the first three, accelerating, 22 languages, the merging of cultures, all of these structures of who's doing what and so forth. Relatively slow internet penetration, but now accelerating. Rural phones, fastest growing in the world. Eventually more people in India than anywhere else. Technology, an example is that fishermen coming into the Indian ports will use their mobile phones to text for what has the best tuna fish price, and they'll choose the port based on that. These people are clever, and they're going to catch up as well.
So let's just stop it there. Think about how long ago this is in the internet when we're talking about texting in ports. Now there's apps for that. Forget about you wouldn't even speak to somebody. I don't even know if they're, it's absolutely mind-blowing how much this has grown. Coming in off a port, cell phone technology was really just taking off in that 2004 to 2008-9 range when everybody had to have one. And now, he perfectly describes what these devices are and become later on.
Why do I talk about four? Because each of them is distinctly different, and each of them will be determined in many ways by the way in which they use information, and the way in which their culture processes information, and the way they use information to empower people, businesses, and globalization.
People, businesses, and globalization. Again, globalization is so key here, guys.
And the internet is this phenomena that's not slowing down. It shouldn't be a surprise to you all. We always think, oh God, is it over yet? No. We've got a lot more coming. And there's a law called Kreider's law, which is much worse, which says that disk performance doubles every year. So that's a factor of 1,000 every 5 years. So that has a lot of interesting implications. For example, video. So YouTube, huge number of people. They're on the order of 10 hours of YouTube video uploaded into YouTube every minute.
10 hours. Now, guys, what he says here is kind of mind-blowing because he actually speaks to 2019 and this law of exponential growth. Think about what he just said. Back in 2008, every minute about 10 hours. I believe that the latest figures are over 400 hours are uploaded every minute onto YouTube. And in 10 years, it could be 40,000 if the platform still exists. Think about that. This exponential growth. And he puts it into perspective, by the way, on how it would be impossible to even watch this stuff. And he even predicts the device most people will be watching this content on.
And if you watch the videos, you will, be shocked. And so I was thinking, okay, so if you do the math, by the year 2019, you're going to have a device that you can carry, an iPod-like device that you can carry in your purse or on your wallet or in your belt, that is 85 years of video. So you can't watch it your whole life, right? You're dead before you finish watching all the videos on this device. It's sort of the ultimate frustrating device, I think, to be invented.
And now let's think about that. That's pretty damn accurate, When we look at, think about what I'm able to do. This 11 years ago, it was not possible for me to live stream. Forget about high definition video. That was not an option. I believe 480p was the absolute max you could go. And now I can reach an audience of, tens of thousands every day, millions if I get subscribers or if it gets spread enough. And I can compete with big media. Simply, not reporting on, a press conference or a document or a court hearing, but bring that information to you guys in person like we're watching here. This isn't really a press conference. It's more of a speech, but I feel like it's important history. And you can watch it. I can give my commentary on it. And if you'd like, all the information is right there for you. You have access to it too on just about every device, whether you're sitting on your computer or you want to use your smart device. It's right here, right? You can just access it there in high definition. Plenty of tools out there. And later on, he kind of talks about, librarians and history And I just think it's remarkable that right there, he predicted that you'd never even be able to look in your whole life at all the content that would be uploaded to this thing. And he's correct. Not that you'd want to. There's a lot of trash out there, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get to the next segment here.
Makes sense. It's a simple idea, but the same principle is a good example of mobility. That basically we're mobile, we're moving all the time. Why are you lugging all this stuff around? Let the computers and the internet handle this for you, and so forth. This has a big implementation on business models because it means that you can begin to live a lot of your lives online. There's this new phenomenon called social networks, and judging by the look of this audience, many of you probably have children who are members of social networks, and the social networks are a huge phenomena. Huge phenomena. And they're social, there are new ways of meeting, there's new ways of finding people, new ways of communicating, and they're here to stay.
Let's just stop it right there. 2009, they're here to stay. He's talking about social networks and their impact. He's going to name a few that did make it. I think the only one I'm not sure of is the one out in the UK. I think he said Bebo. But I think he names YouTube and Facebook. I'm not sure that he even names MySpace. It seems like he bet on the winning pony. And let's not forget, this guy was heavily involved in just about everything internet-wise. Just about everything. In fact, he talks about being on the board of Apple also. Oh, well, wait, I thought that Google and Apple were competing. But you got to understand, in the early days of the internet, Apple had a basic monopoly on digital streaming and music. So right here, again, in 2009, he's talking about social media. He's talking about the cloud. You're never going to lose your contacts because it's already up there. And you'll always be able to access it. It wouldn't be just losing a device. It's really, really insightful, and he's been spot on.
And whether it's YouTube or MySpace or Bebo in Europe or so forth, or YouTube, Facebook and so forth, the sum of all of those.
I guess he did name MySpace, my mistake.
New online lifestyle, which from our perspective, if you're in college today or high school today, becomes really defining. And it is the next step in this evolution of this new model. So an example would be, anybody here drop your cell phone and lose all your phone numbers? Anybody here drop your computer, lose all your information? Happens to me all the time. Let the network take it, so forth. That shift is a permanent shift.
That shift is 100% correct. Think about this. Now, when I grew up, we had phone books, all right? We had picture albums. Sometimes your parents might embarrass you by showing one of your friends, whipping it out and showing them this stuff. And now, it's nothing like that at all. At all. Everything about our lives is out there. You can see what friends are their contacts. You can probably get their email address and their phone number rather easily. You can get the many platforms they're on, whether it be Snapchat, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all very popular ones. And I try to use Twitter to my advantage. I have Facebook. I try not to post a lot of my personal information because of this very real shift. But the truth of the matter is, listen, I know that everything technology-wise is track, trace, database. I know I have a spy device right here that's using ACR, auto content recognition, that does include video and audio. And he's going to talk about that video content recognition later in this. These were permanent shifts. They do have access to every single phone number in here. And I used to remember phone numbers. One of the last things he talks about is the end of rote learning. And that means memorization and how to kind of search better. I mean, this guy talks about it all. Talks about controlling the narrative in many respects digitally. And I just thought this was so important because, again, this guy's a Bilderberg steering member. And I just want to jump back here and let people know how important this is. You know, there's a reason I work for We Are Change these days. And it's because Luke Rudowski is the man. You may see me and Luke argue every once in a while on some of these videos, but it's all in good fun. And, we're allowed to disagree. I think people should disagree. But what you're looking at is Eric Schmidt at one of these Bilderberg meetings being confronted by Luke and others. And he doesn't want to answer questions about these secretive meetings. He obviously has a lot of insight, folks, as he is spot on in 2008 about the society we're living in now. And this is Bilderberg 2011. Again, not on the list the last couple years, but that doesn't mean that he's not at these meetings. So we're going to continue with the next clip of Mr. Schmidt.
Part of the culture that we encourage that. We ask people, one of the things that you worry about when you manage people is how do you know you do a contract, or how do you know, those of you running large businesses, how do you know people are doing any work? Well, here we are sitting in this wonderful hotel.
How do you know your workers are doing work? It's 2008, and he slips this in rather slickly. I thought that this was kind of an important thing to quickly go over. Now, Schmidt knows damn well, look who he's involved with, folks. He's involved with the Pentagon. He's on the innovation board. Again, he's worked with all these things. This was the beginning of artificial intelligence, basically weighing in on whether they should fire you or not, what you're doing, your personality type. And right now, we found out that Amazon is using an AI to automatically fire low productivity workers, by the way. That's a real thing. It's the evolution of AI. Now, back in the day when you're working with Google, you're probably with a lot more prestigious people, but not always. There's shitbags in every profession, let's be honest. There's lazy people. And so what he's about to talk about is how he would have them summarize a a one-sentence answer of what they worked on all week or what they did for the week. And if they wouldn't answer or, were dodgy about it, an AI system would kind of pry at them. And they try to make it fun and humorous. Ha 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 ha. It's called incrementalism. It's getting you used to this idea. And it's also beta testing these type of AI projects that try to get productivity out of workers.
Well, we ask people, and maybe you don't, well, every week we ask everybody to give us a one-sentence summary of what they did this week. You'd be amazed how hard it is to get people to do that. Surprising. And by the way, if you don't provide your one-sentence summary, there's this computer that just keeps harassing you, and it harasses you with even more humor, right? So, in snippets and poetry and so forth and so on, and eventually everyone submits their snippets.
Eventually everybody submits their snippets, and it does it so fun with poetry and such. See how that works? And again, it shows you how far back Google was at this forefront of acclimating you to this type of culture. So AI very much in the mix on, hiring and firing, let's be honest. And you look at a mega corporation like Amazon, you can't keep up, you're out of the mix, and you don't even get to talk to a supervisor. Next clip.
The question is about the future of the three screens, the big screen being the television, the medium screen being the computer, and the small screen or the cell phone.
Let me stop it. First of all, I want to say that this question is rather insightful. Again, 2008. This guy's going to say, look, I think that TV is almost dead. And guess what? Broadcast television? You suck. You're out. You are almost dead. The way that other platforms have survived, cable, HBO, is having top-notch entertainment and streaming services. Netflix, Hulu, they dominate. They dominate. I don't have cable. I haven't had cable for probably 5 or 6 years, and most of us don't. I get a high-speed internet connection. I watch what I want when I watch. I have streaming services for my fights, which is really the only sport I like to watch. So my UFC Fight Pass, they're forcing ESPN Plus down your throat. There's some other stuff out there, folks. But really, largely, broadcast television is done, and this guy is dead on. And again, Schmidt is very insightful here and talks really about the innovativeness of this small screen and how the small screen is going to dominate society. The little magic box in everybody's pocket.
I just came back from the National Conference for Media Reform, where there's a lot of activists who have traditionally centered around broadcast television and now increasingly net neutrality on the computer. But I want to ask you what's your view of the culture of the small screen, because we have a culture of a big screen or broadcast television, which I believe is really on its way out. which is basically receiving information and maybe being angry or maybe being satisfied with what you get. The culture of the medium screen is really a culture that you've talked a bit about general purpose computing. But what will the culture of the mobile phone be? Will it be a lockdown device of the sort many in this country are used to, where the carrier controls what comes in and goes out? Will it move more towards the general purpose computing, or be something else entirely?
Well, thank you. We have a strong view that we want as flexible a platform on these mobile devices because we have no idea what people are going to do with these mobile devices. If you think about the opportunity that is before us, of course we can take traditional media, big screen television, for example, and flow it into the little screen, and there'll be quite a bit of that. We have a technology called Android, which is an open platform, essentially open software for mobile devices. And there's been a contest for applications. One of the most interesting applications, by the way, is an application which uses the camera of this. Remember, the mobile phones are interesting because they're GPSs, they're cameras, and they're computers, and they're screens. Oh, and by the way, you can make telephone calls on them.
So let's stop right there. He's talking about the birth of the Android system. So this is before, it was anywhere mainline. The only thing with really a touchscreen you could get was an Apple device. And just outsourcing all these different apps, he's going to tell you about video content recognition 11 years ago with these things. And it's only gotten better and better. And you know this. You know that you can now put one of your mobile devices up and it'll tell you all about, and sometimes you can get an augmented reality view overlay of your camera in live time. This was all thought about and developed years and years ago so companies like Google could continue to dominate. And remember, when he came in on this, guys, what was it all about? It was about the future of the internet, the structure of the world, and the new world order, as everybody calls it.
You hold the thing up and it looks around, it sees where you are, it tells you everything you're seeing by doing video recognition out of the camera. And it uses all of the information resources that I'm describing. So the reason I mention that is that that's an example of something that's not possible to do with anything other than a mobile device. We do believe, Google sort of takes the view that ultimately consumers win in these markets. And so ultimately the distribution markets and so forth will evolve to some mechanism where if you want to see the movie in the movie house, you see it. You want to see it on a DVD, you'll see it. And if you want to see it on a small screen, you'll be able to see it. Interesting experiments. There's something called...
So again, he talks about there also how everything's going to be cross-platformed. And he's right on there. Listen, I go to the movies less and less. I enjoy entertainment with my nieces or myself at home on a huge screen television, 55-inch 4K. I got it delivered to my home for under $197. Okay, guys, with tax. Got on a Cyber Monday deal. Technology has come down less, but a lot of the time, I have 4 monitors in front of me. We talk about that middle screen. Because this is my work, I'll watch something on the side like this. I watch this on a medium size or a large size screen. I don't know if you can even call it medium. I got a 42-inch monitor as my main one with a couple 20s and a smaller one here. But then when I am on the road, or if I'm in a car and I'm not driving or I'm taking a trip, a lot of the time the information comes here. I'll admit, I'm probably not as much of a video guy. I don't have Instagram. I don't have Snapchat. I see a lot of people absorbing themselves and just kind of checking in on their friends. But again, he kind of predicted that as well, talking about, the transition into social networks earlier.
Called a KNOL, K-N-O-L, that we're in the process of releasing, which will be essentially websites defined by experts, where genuinely pedigreed experts will talk about an area and try to summarize it.
So right there again, we're talking about curation of content, what the truth is, what the best content out there is. And Google right here is talking, I say Google because at this time I think he is the CEO of Google before he's the CEO of Alphabet, which he stepped down from, by the way. I want to let people know that. One thing about Schmidt, other than being a globalist, is he stepped down as chairman of Alphabet after stepping down from chairman of Google. This was a couple years ago, almost, year and a half, amidst some rumblings of the Me Too stuff. And then he stepped down from the board. Yet he's still out there kind of defending their practices as of Monday in front of the BBC, which is very odd. He is still a shareholder, obviously, owns a lot of money, but he's done a lot of PR for the company. Okay? And even back at this time, he's talking about, I don't want to say fake news, but more insightful information or articles being boosted to the search. He talks about the media not really verifying information and trying to be first. And we do still constantly see that. I think that we see a lot more of the promotion of false narratives, not that we didn't in 2008. Folks, the propaganda, I don't know if it's gotten even more because we totally ignore now the wars in the Middle East. At least there was a debate in 2008 about some of these things. You never hear about that on the mainstream. It's totally gone. And it makes me want to throw up. So you look at this, and it's almost like foreshadowing of where we are today with curating content, especially because Google absorbs YouTube, and YouTube absolutely curates content. And the algorithm, unfortunately, it works against a guy like me. I have to be careful of what I put in the headlines. I certainly sometimes censor the words that I use because of semantics that might be caught by the algorithm. This is real. I don't know how this video is going to do because of Schmidt's relationship to Google and YouTube. But let's continue. He's talking, this is almost the birth of curating content in this quote-unquote future of the internet, New World Order.
There is a danger on the web that it's the Gresham's law problem, that sort of the poor quality, repeated information overwhelms the insightful one. You'll see this today in the media, where there's such a race for speed that the best and most interesting article is seldom the first. It's often the one after a few days or a week, some incredibly insightful person sort of articulates it in some interesting way. We've not yet developed good techniques to distinguish between the most popular and roughly correct and then these incredibly insightful things that we're talking about. Ultimately, it will be a combination of what you said. I don't think Google will ourselves go into the verticals. We will want other people to build those. The one final thing to mention is we have a product, not to sell Google products here, but we have an advertising product.
So right there, he talks about the curation of content, and now he's going to talk about the markability of that and the birth of AdSense. And really, the way AdSense used to work is that basically if your content was watched and it was watched by a demographic, they would do that. And in this, he's talking about blogs and all these other things. So let's continue. He's basically going to promote AdSense before it's a thing. And listen, AdSense is important. You got to understand, guys, for the ability for me to spend time not only watching this stuff, but then editing it down, boiling it down, spending 35, 40 minutes with you guys, that takes time. And this video may make $20. It could make maybe $200 max if the algorithm were fair, maybe a little more. And you could get more independent information out there. Instead, what are they promoting? They're promoting CNN. They're promoting Fox News. They're promoting MSNBC at the top. And I know everybody talks about this right-leaning bias, or this left-leaning bias, but let me tell you something. They promote the mainstream right wing as well, especially when it's pro-establishment.
So that if you, for example, are very interested in a particular area, and it sounds like you are, you could become a popular writer and author in that area, and then our ads can be targeted against that, and you can make some money doing it. So that's a way of getting more voices funded.
And by the way, I agree with Schmidt there. That would be a way of getting more voices out there. Absolutely. And it can be a tool of empowerment. It's a shame that you've used it as a tool of restriction with a constant fear of demonetization over the smallest things. Guys, I can do 5 videos on MK Ultra, and it's a roll of the dice. I did one where I broke down basically 2 of the same segments the same night, and one got approved and one didn't. And at the end of the day, it's not just about the money that gives somebody so it supports their work, but it gives Google an incentive to put it out there. If they don't have that financial incentive, well, then what happens? Well, they don't put it out there as much, so less people see it. And that's a problem. So let's continue.
So please keep that in mind. But my question had to do with this new world that you've described in this new economy. What role does diversity play in that new world? Is it something that's still relevant and critical, or is it something that has leveled the playing field to such an extent where we can see those issues disappearing?
So again, he harkens back to the very beginning of his speech with the New World Order comment and this new world and diversity. And in a lot of respects, I'm going to agree with Schmidt here, but I'm going to comment on one of the dangers he says here.
Well, we start every day assuming that people are the same everywhere. One of the most often questions I get is, how is Google different in other countries? And aside from language, I would tell you that it's not. I'm sorry to say. There's not some great secret that the people in China, the people in Russia, the people in Africa, and the Americans and the Europeans and Latin Americans are different. In fact, we're not. We search and look for roughly similar kinds of information, much of which is entertainment or fun related. And so aside from language, there isn't very much difference between people. And the other principle we start every day with is that intelligence and ability is distributed worldwide. That there's, as many brilliant people everywhere.
So I want to say I agree with that. He's absolutely right. There are brilliant people everywhere, and they tap into that. The only problem is that when you have kind of this one-type policy in these regions, you come to the problem where you're getting hit up with these censorship questions about China and real censorship questions. When you're helping them build Dragonfly, and you have I believe it was 14,000. I'm not sure. It could be 1,400. I don't want to misquote that, but you have this workforce of 88,000 that are working on this censored version of the internet for China, and only a few. And again, you talk about compartmentalization. That's not a great policy. You can talk about diversity till the cows come home, but when you're talking about globalism, it seems like you have one agenda for all people, and that includes us. And when you're working on a censored version of the internet for China, when you're talking about what the best content is to go up top, it's troubling to me.
And one of the things that I'm proudest of is that an awful lot of these incredibly smart people are trapped inside of governments and information where they really don't have an option. I'll give an example. As a friend of mine is a computer scientist in Kenya, and he's talking to me about Google. He says, Google's incredibly important in our teaching computers. I said, oh, sure, no big deal. He says, no, you don't understand. We don't have any textbooks. There's a PhD program in computer science. So that gives you a sense of the kind of impact that information can have with smart people globally. So I would argue that diversity is the lifeblood of the future, that it's incredibly important, and that the most important thing you do from a diversity perspective is to empower communities. So again, I would have to agree with him on that point. If you look at this, for instance, he's right. I don't consider myself a historian, but I'm sure able to get historical content and share it with you guys. I do consider myself a researcher and on par with anybody if you give me the tools. And Google is one of those tools. But is it really Google? I mean, there are other search engines out there. You can use Yahoo. However, Google's library. I mean, one of the main reasons I was able to find Warren C. DeBruy and his JFK connection was I was able to find an old FBI publication and the actual scans of these things. So it is an incredible tool. And when he talks about people in Kenya, well, hey, even here in the United States, if I want to learn Photoshop or Premiere or After Effects, or I want to put a new tool in my toolbox, I no longer have to sign up for a course. I have to know what to search for, and that's why this last clip is really important. And then watch that, and all of a sudden absorb that information. And if I don't absorb it the first time, it's okay, because I can hit pause, and I can go back, and I can go step by step. And that's why this final thing that he talks about, rote learning, is absolutely correct as well. Think about the insight of this guy. This is 2008. He's talking about the development, the globalization, the future of the internet, and the quote-unquote structure of the world, the new world order, as everybody says. And he's right about this final point.
Or even three.
One of my own views is that the world is going to go from sort of rote learning to more sort of learning how to search better. And that one of the problems, if you go forward 10 or 20 years, is that there's going to be so much more information that it's going to be overwhelming. It's already overwhelming to me, and it will be overwhelming to the young people who today, live on the, and that'll be true of social communities as well. So there's an obvious role for the librarian. Historically, the way it would go is you'd go to the librarian and you have a chat about this book, this idea, and librarians were incredibly good at helping you. So a reasonable outcome of this whole thing is that libraries, and in particular the people who provide judgment that computers cannot, become more important. It moves from books on stacks to really being very broadly interested people. I will say to you that there's going to be more and more and more information, not less and less. And I think all of us learning how to navigate that, to find the things that we care about, and then to use it to make the world a better place is really our mission.
I don't know if it's their mission anymore, but I want you to remember what he just said, because he's dead on. Think about that. It really is about people now, guys. Like I just said you, I'm going to look that up. Some person is going to tell me for free how to do that. And when history comes along, it's going to be people like me, people like you, that share this information with others that are going to make a difference. And I've got a lot of people in the chat asking about Bilderberg this year, just so you guys know. Totally keeping up on it. In fact, Lee Stewie over at Press for Truth contacted Bilderberg yesterday, and they are saying that they will not be revealing the location or the agenda until a few days before the meeting. So it's a great question. Is it going to happen in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? Are they going to try to pull a sneaky one on us and have it next weekend? I doubt they're going to be doing it this weekend, or there'll be something leaking. We don't know for sure. I do want to thank and give a shout out to TruthStream Media. They also donated to the $3,000 fundraiser. Guys, we need your support, especially with every day that passes. Obviously, the plane tickets are going to be more expensive. Obviously, the hotels are going to be tougher to book. And I'm hoping that myself and Luke Rudowski are going to be able to go. If it's in Canada, Mexico, or the United States, I'm trying to make that happen. Can only really make that happen with you guys' support. So please consider going to that GoFundMe. And I promise you, no matter what, this year we are going to be streaming some of the biggest and best Bilderberg information out there. I'm going to be throwing up a video probably later tonight. I'm feeling spry. I know it's 1:20 in the morning if you're watching this live, by the way, East Coast. There's Schmidt being confronted by Luke. It's the kind of stuff that you can expect. But I'm going to be showing you an exclusive, never-before-seen confrontation that I did with Robert Zoellick in 2017, the ex-head of the World Bank. And we're going to go over that briefly. It won't be the in-depth deep dive that you got here tonight, guys. And by the way, if you did enjoy this deep dive, if you like this channel, please, please, please hit the thumbs up button. Share this stuff on social media. Subscribe now. We're almost at 17,500 subscribers already. It's the road to 30K. When we get to 30K, we can do so many more things. I've decided that when we hit 20K again, that next 5K marker, I'm going to do another Ask Me Anything AMA over in the side with the chat. I had fun with that. And maybe, just maybe, depending on when that happens, I'm going to have a special guest sitting next to me. I don't know if that's definitely going to happen, but I could definitely see it happening. So, guys, thanks for sticking with me so much. And I got to tell you, I'm hoping to be able to make this Bilderberg 2019 conference, because it's really not being talked about, not only in the mainstream anymore, but not in the so-called alternative media. I'll see you all soon. Thank you so much for watching.